Welcome to That's So Clutch, an automotive podcast that bridges the gap between car industry experts and those who are not. Hey everyone, welcome back to That's So Clutch. I'm Alini Ferreira, your host, and today I'm with Chris Buchanan from First Texas Honda. How are you today, Chris?
I'm doing great.
Chris went from being a mechanic to service advisor, and probably a lot more in the upcoming weeks, so you know all the ins and outs of service. On top of that, you've been a race car mechanic. You've also been a race car driver, and you started your own racing team. How do you have any time?
Because I surround myself with people that are better than me, and those people inspire me to do all this too. Plus, it's always about just having fun with it.
Well, somehow you still have time to do stand-up comedy sessions, which...
Open mics.
Yeah. Open mics,
Open
okay.
mics, so,
Open mics.
that 5 minutes of fame that you get, open mic, you try to crush it every time.
And you've walked the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage twice, which, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's like a 500-mile hiking experience that relives the pilgrim's journey to the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela.
Yep.
It's spiritual, it's life-changing, and it's like a 30 to 35-day hike, which is wild.
Yeah.
So let's just go right into it. What are your top tips on maintaining your vehicle's health in between service?
Just daily checkups, depending on the vehicle you have. Like some vehicles are your workhorse, right? You got an old truck that's going to last you. You check the oil every time you fill it up with gas. Other cars that are like high maintenance race cars, even the cars that we race, which are Hondas, we have to check them every time before we take it out. And that's just the level of car that you purchase. And that's one of those things about like, if it is your steady workhorse to get you a reliable car, you have to just change the oil, get the oil changed, put gas in it. That's what everybody wants out of a vehicle. But there's also that like long-term maintenance that you'll have to do eventually, spark plugs with internal combustion engines that we have nowadays. And then also like your fluid changes on your battery powered vehicles, aka your electric vehicles, because they do have fluids that run through them and they do have service intervals.
So why do race cars and regular vehicles require different maintenances at different times?
Because a race car you're using at, hopefully, if you're a good driver, you're driving it at 100%, right? Or you could be like me, drives at 101%, runs into a wall. So, I mean, we crunched up our car pretty quick out there, and it's just pushing the car to the limits because you are not only racing the people on the track with you, you're racing the clock at all times, And you're not, if it's going for checkers or you're going home on the record, it's just putting it all out there. So if you take a car and you did that every day, going back and forth to work, your car's not going to last.
Yeah.
It's just going to break down on you.
So can you explain the benefits of regular inspections and diagnostic tests, even if a car seems to be running fine?
Yeah, a car can run fine. And this is also where it comes down to understanding what your needs are as a customer. And that's what, like, I always try. Take your time, listen, what is it? Is it a drivability problem? Is it a new noise you haven't heard before? What is your concern? And that comes with old age and high mileage, right? Rubber breaks down, our tires break down. And sometimes it's just as simple as like, people don't understand tires. That's one that's always slips by all the time that you're like, nah, these tires are 5 years old, Mr. Miss Customer. We're looking, these things have more wrinkles on them than I do on my face. So let's talk about changing them out for some new rubber, and that's going to maybe alleviate that road noise you hear.
But so what are key signs that show a car needs maintenance or repair that customers might not see immediately?
Probably longer crank times when you start the car. Maybe if your car, not a lot of them do nowadays, comes with a temperature gauge, you can just be like, hey, man, that thing's riding up there by the H, not in between the L and the H anymore, letting you know it's running hot. That could be a lot of things. That could be so many things. Also, besides long cranks, vibrations, squeaks, bumps, rattles. People think, if the car starts, the car's okay. And it's not. You've got transmission, you got axles, you got suspension, steering, all in there in between, keeping it together. So when those rubber joints and everything goes out like that, it's time to take it pretty much to the doctor. So,
well, you guys are the doctors of cars.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
That's always weird because actually growing up, I worked for a place, and it might be trademarked, but it was called the Car Hospital. And instead of uniforms, they made us wear scrubs. Yeah, and
Did you like work on the cars in scrubs?
Yeah, it was really cool. We
No
were
way.
diagnostic specialists, and we would tell them to take their cars to a dealer.
Wow.
Like if it was above us, like you need to go to a specialist. We're just your ER nurse over here. Like we'll jump the battery.
Well, okay. So moving on, a lot of people feel like third-party warranties are a scam. What do you feel about them?
Better than fourth-party warranties. Always. You're still on the podium. You get a bronze. Mm-hmm. But in reality, there are a bunch of good ones out there. And working as a service advisor and a mechanic, and then working as a service advisor, doing the paperwork, actually working with the warranty companies, you understand, you're like, oh man, this is a good company. They cover everything from, bumper to bumper, whatever it is, whatever the limit is. Because you also work with ones that are not good. Or ones that are very specific and very niche. And now being in it, I feel like I can give that advice to customers.
Are there ones that are better than others? Like maybe like just windshield or just tires?
Yeah, the ones that are like comprehensive or all encompassing and whatever fancy words they use, like ultra plus magnum, whatever.
Yeah.
It's, it probably means it's the best of the best. And it's going to cost you, but you realize that investment initially, if it does break down, and it may break down because we usually offer this for a reason, that will cover you. And maybe
and you can't predict a rock hitting your windshield or like
exactly.
a
Windshield
tire blowing
coverage,
out.
get it. Invest. Man, especially
I think
nowadays,
that's the one that's more worth it.
Yeah, because everything has a camera now behind the windshield. There's also that process of aiming those cameras.
True.
And or calibrating stuff. Forget about it. Then you're paying even more for just a windshield that used to be like, hey, Bob, I need you to come over to my house, change out the windshield.
Yeah.
So now, if you do have that coverage, I haven't seen one that doesn't cover it. So that is always an added bonus with that.
How can customers tell if they're being scammed? Like, how can they choose the right provider and not go to, like, a sketchy place? Like, what are red flags that they can look out for?
It's always good to be a trusted source. Like, if you are buying from a dealership, doesn't matter what dealership, but, like, an actual automotive or, like, a manufacturer-backed dealership, i.e. Honda, Infiniti, Subaru, ones like that, then what they offer is going to have to be up to the quality of the manufacturer for them to approve it and just for them to sell it there next side by side their vehicle.
Let's say a person wants to do a service at home or like an upgrade. What's a service they should never do alone due to safety or like complexity reasons?
Anything that you can't carry, right? Like
right.
You can't,
don't blow out your back.
Who's going to bench press a transmission into place? On your jack stands on your back.
I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I bet there's 10 dudes right now that are just underneath the car working. They got to get to work. They started that clutch last night at 8 when they got home, and they were still at it right now. And it's one of those where you're going to get tired. But being a young guy myself one time, I would do it all the time. I swapped out an engine one time. Took me all
By
night.
yourself?
Had to call in the next day. My roommate, he was worth a sack of potatoes, but he was like, I got to go. I got a real job. I have a car that runs. So I just got under there. And I started working, jack stand and all that. And I got bit by a spider, like, while under the car. And the next day I didn't feel too good. I had a big old welt on my arm.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, spider bites are bad.
Yeah, and that was also the first time I ever called into work. So it was like a real guilt trip for me. I don't know if y'all know this, but the Santiago thing is a Catholicism because it's the way of St. James.
Yeah.
And that just, like, has always carried with me. It's like, you always work as hard as you can every day. It's something like my father and going to church instilled into me when I was young. And doing that and then realizing, like, I should have had help. Because I work next to people that have lost fingers and, like, have big old gnarly scars from dropping the transmission right on their face, which I was doing that night. And it was a learning experience, but it's one of those things where if you cannot safely do it, you do not have the correct tools, it shouldn't be done alone. Even in a shop environment like our shop over at Honda, you're surrounded by people looking out for you.
Yeah.
You're always side by side by somebody. And that's like our safety for that. And we have all the right tools where you don't have to lift it with just pure man strength. Anyway.
Well, so basically, you could lose a lot more money and possibly a finger if you do it alone.
Exactly. Doing stuff alone. Bring a friend along. Get them involved.
Or go to a dealer or go somewhere. Find your trusted little handyman. So Do you think that car culture or the racing community has influenced the aftermarket industry and the customization of vehicles?
No, I mean, everything's influenced by something, right? I mean, you go back, look at time, and you look at Subaru. Subaru wasn't big down here in the South, right? But everybody knew it was Subaru and Rally. And then people in Texas, we love everything fast. And they found out rally racing. They were like, WRX came out in 03, and, or I think it was like 02. They were skyrocketed. Everybody had a WRX bug eye, right?
Yeah.
It was awesome sauce. And that's because of racing. Because they all saw him out there racing, Colin McRae, Peter Solberg, and all these cats just whipping them around on WRC through Portugal. It's beauty to see, right? And that was like the cream of the crop. And you realize that that car, its blood and DNA is into that road car. So how that transfers over, like just from them racing into selling that car on Monday, right? As they say, win on Sunday, sell on Monday is the old term. They sell that car on Monday, but there's people out there that are replicating what they did from that race team to put on their car, be it a wing, be it a pink badges. So stuff like that, it's not really functional on the track, is it? Those tires ain't gonna help you on the track.
Looks.
It's just for look. It's that form. It's pretty. That's like where the customization right now is sort of weird because it's either all out, you're dropping big money and you build in a car, or you have somebody that is, I want it for looks. I watch these videos online and I want to replicate that, you know? And that's awesome because everybody puts their little flair on it, their little twist. And that's what the like customization in car community, that's what it's really about. You know, is like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's that act of art that you're doing every day. Driving your car represents that person. And that's so cool to me.
So you talked about car community. What is the overall goal of like car meetups and like cars and coffee or cars and caffeine? Do you think that it's strictly for people who can repair or have vehicles like that, or can anyone go?
No, just like that. You have people, there's old stickers that people used to put on their cars that said, built, not bought, right? And that's true. I mean, that's a real statement that you can say, and it gives that person a little bit of pride in doing what they're doing. That's what the car community is. It's like AA for gearheads, right?
Right.
We probably all like Legos, or we all like putting stickers on our Trapper Keepers. Back in my day, they were Trapper Keepers. I don't know about you, but you did that because it was like that little form of expression. Now we all got cars. And it's like AA meeting. You like keep up with people and you see cars evolve and progress. And this is their work of art that they brought, or their hot rod. You know, it's a little beat up. That fender might have hit a guardrail at one time, but this car still drives straight and it pulls 8s in the quarter. You're like, 8s in the quarter? And they're like, yeah, 8s in the quarter. And then you're like, I don't even know what that means. Let's go, man. Like,
you sound so smart.
Yeah, exactly. Like that enthusiasm people have, it's addictive.
Yeah.
You get in there. And then there's people like being on both sides of it. You're like, you can tell jealousy or you can tell this, but it's being there every day. And it's that respect of like, I don't care if you changed out your headlight bulb. If you did something in your car, good. Like, that's what it's about. It's about making that your own. Yeah. And that's what like a car community is. I was, when we started Cars and Caffeine, you mentioned, I was actually working there. And one of my big things at Honda, we were 7 days a week at that time. And I was just, hey, man, I never get to go to car meets. And our service manager, Cody Penna, shout out to my boy. He just one day, he was like, let's have a car meet here. I was like, yes, let's have a car meet here. Let's bring the community here. I can still work, be productive, but I get to be around
cool
cars.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? And then he's starting up his, I think it's like Caffeine and Gasoline here at Austin Infinity. So, I mean, just spreading love like that guy. And that's what it is meeting guys like Cody, Timothy Shook, Will Hardiman. I was on Will Hardiman's race team.
Yeah.
I learned so much from him being on his race team for a year. Yeah. Just things that you never think about being just
What are some things that you learned from being on that team?
Car setup. Man, car setup blew my mind. Broke it down real simple. He's like, what can you change on race day? I was like, I don't know. He's like, we're working with this. We only have this finite amount that we can change the car. That's tire pressures. So you just check the tire pressures, make sure the car runs good, and we'll have a great race. And this is endurance racing. So we're out there 12 hours a day. And it was just so much learning that, handling aspects, why sometimes it's better to just stick with the stock parts instead of going after market because that part was designed to last X amount of miles. Be
Yeah.
it a clutch or something like that that's on an OEM Civic. It's meant to last 100,000 miles. It might not last that in a race car. You might only get 20,000 miles, but it's made to work in a harsh environment. I always compare being an auto mechanic to being like in karate. You're going to go through all the trials. You're going to do a lot of wrenching, the same movements over and over. But what you're learning about is life. Yeah, you are. You're learning not everything goes your way. You're turning wrenches and you're like, I think it's this. And sometimes you're wrong. And you have to deal with that. You have to deal with being accountable. You know, you have to deal with being responsible, following through and stuff like that until you get to that point of like, not enlightenment, because you're always working on that daily, but it's just being happy. That's what I love about cars. Anybody can do it. If you look at our technician team over at Honda, big to small, I love them all. They are the best gang of guys I work with.
Well, my last question for you is, if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Don't be afraid.
Don't
Do
be
it.
afraid.
Just get out there and do it. Just there's nothing to it but to do it, and you gotta stick with it. I was saying this to a kid I need to stop saying that, but I was saying this to a guy the other day that if you want to be good at this, like, just see it through. You're gonna, and take on the problem. Go towards the fire. The one job nobody else wants to do, go see what it is. Be about it.
Be that leader.
Just don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Take the risk. Because that's what started happening. Just like doing comedy. Don't be afraid. Get up there and do it. And next thing you know, you find yourself in front of more people. So, yeah.
The risk might lead you to something more.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, thank you so much for joining, Chris. This was
Thank you.
very fun, and I loved learning about all the race cars and the car community. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, please feel free to leave a question down below about the automotive industry.
People here.
Maybe we'll feature it in the next video. See ya.